So one thing real quick, I got back from Denmark. I have to tell you, this whole secularism thing that I'm talking about, it's serious. I saw Northern Europe is the most secular. Sweden, Denmark, Holland, Norway are completely secularized. They're completely closed. They're completely closed. They're also very affluent countries, right? So they can kind of live with the effects of their secularism without too much harm, materially. But in the soul, man, it's bad. It's bad. And how does it manifest itself? All the men are weak. All the men are weak. It's really, I got to tell you, in the older men, it's almost repulsive, the weaknesses. In the younger men, there's hope. There's hope. All right, but if you close your heart and thus your mind to the sacred character of creation, all you have left is the body. All you have left is the body. You cannot feel spiritual things. You cannot grasp higher things. All you have left, you're only, if you become your own touchstone, all you have left is your body. And you become very sensual. Very sensual. And these men are weak. They are weak. It's really, I got to tell you, it's almost like repulsive. Because see a man at 50 years old who has not developed any manly virtue or manly character. Basically a Peter Pan type person. And Peter Pan, you know, they grow up to be Captain Hooks. That's what people miss in the story. Captain Hook was a Peter Pan, right? And you know how disagreeable he was. But these men grow up without developing any manly virtue. Any manly virtue. And so they grow weak and the culture grows weak. And it's very serious and very dangerous. What they're going to face in those countries, and I talked to some guys who weren't caught up in this, but generally the whole culture is, but there's few exceptions. I talked to the man, I said, what are you going to do with the Muslim problem? And he says, we don't know. We let this happen. We let this happen. And the men don't have the character to fight it because it's already starting. The chaos is already starting. And they don't know how they're going to take care of it. What will happen is men refuse to be men. And men don't grow up to be men. If boys don't grow up to be men, then in the end, you will submit to some kind of tyranny or another. And it's going to happen there because they're soft. They're really soft. When you turn your eyes, when you close your heart to the sacred dimension of creation, and this is really men, listen up, listen up. If we turn our hearts, close our hearts to the sacred dimension of creation, okay, that means that we turn our hearts away from God. But the energy of God that courses through the universe is an energy that instills virtue in men. And virtue, the word virtue comes from the Latin man, vir, virtue, virile, strong. That's vir, comes from the Latin, is man. Man is made to be virtuous, which means that man is to be of strong character. And males are created to be strong, and boys are created to grow into men. And when that doesn't happen, and I talked to these guys, 50, 60 years old, man, and they were all sensual. Oh, what I feel, my mood, blah, blah, blah. I gave a talk. I talked a lot. I gave a lot, and I received a lot. And what I received, I really saw into the eye of this beast, man. I really saw into it. And you know what was staring back at me? The face of the devil, going, ha, ha, ha. That's really what it was. It's, if you've ever read The Demons by Dostoevsky, it's about a village. It's a story of a village. And there comes a guy in there who brings in the Marxist dogma, the promise of the New Jerusalem, we're going to make it. And it It's a very difficult book to read. It's really disturbing because this village doesn't know how to inculcate this new idea that challenges their established norms, and the village kind of disintegrates, and it's destroyed, and it's destroyed by this lie. Well, the secularism is a lie. It's a lie. And what the secularism does in real life, its concrete ramifications, it makes men weak. So I'm talking to a 50-year-old. You know, I was giving a talk, and a guy stands up, and he says, I feel pain in my chest. I'm thinking to myself, maybe you should call a doctor. I didn't say anything. I said, oh, okay. And he goes, no, I feel pain in my chest. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? And he goes, no, you have to understand, I feel pain in my chest. And I said, what am I supposed to do with that? You caused me pain in my chest. And I said, well, give me a reason. Give me a reason. And he wouldn't say anything. I said, look, you're not giving me a reason. There's no logos here. There's nothing I can grab on to and respond. And he said it one more time, and he sat down. I said, what was that about? And some guys, there were clear thinkers there, don't get me wrong. But they said, boy, that was a clash between America and Europe. Because in America, you don't like what I say, you push back. You push back. And I'm compelled to give my reasons. That's how it works here, right? I don't like what you say, I push you, and you're compelled to give my reasons. And in that give and take, we might find the truth. That's how it works here in America. There, you're not allowed to do any of that anymore. The very fact that this guy was uncomfortable with what I was saying, and he stood up and he said, you've caused me pain, I'm supposed to apologize. Well, the heck with that. That's not happening. But then, you know, a couple of guys came up to me and they said, you should have said, these are the real secular guys and these are the older ones. They were really disturbing talking to them because I could see where this was heading, here in America too. And they said, you should have prefaced everything you said was the way I see it. You should say that. Before you talk, you should always say, the way I see it. I said, but that's presumed. I told them that. That's presumed. If I didn't see it that way, I wouldn't be up here talking and saying it. Right? And they said, no, you have to say, that's the way I see it before you say anything. And that puzzled me for about a day. And then I got it. It's the pinch of incense to Caesar, is what it is. You know, in the Roman Empire, they used to have these places, these kind of fountains without the water. Think of it that way, or fountains without water. And they were placed around the city, and they had incense around there. And when you walked by, you had to take a piece of incense, and you had to throw it in there on the coals, on the coals. And the act of picking up the incense and placing it on the coals broadcasted to everybody that you get to believe what you want to believe, but Caesar is God. So every time you picked up the incense, you declared Caesar is God, and that was the principle that kept everything in union in the Roman Empire. The Christians didn't do that. They have no God but the God of Abraham. Caesar's not God. And so they refused to throw the incense into the fire because Caesar was not their God. That's why they were considered enemies of the state. So I got it. I go, oh, this is the pinch of incense. If I preface everything I say with the way I see it, what I'm declaring to the audience is, well, this is my point of view. But in the end, moral relativism, the belief that no truth exists, holds sway. That is the ultimate principle in operation here. And I thought to myself, that's not going to happen. I didn't do it. I refused to do it. But it wasn't a conflict between the guys. It was a conflict between the older secularists who became effetes. Secularism makes men effetes, not homosexual necessarily. These guys weren't necessarily homosexual. but effetes, weak, walking around and talking like this and standing like this. And they demand, I mean, it's a tyranny behind that. There's such an anger when they see a real man. Because when they see a real man, they're faced with what they are not. And that's why this force comes. You've got to conform. You've got to be like one of us. And that's what can happen here. This is what I saw, okay? Now, was this true of the young guys? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. There are guys in their 20s and into their 30s there, too. There's about 100 guys there. They loved what I was saying. They loved what I was saying. Because what I was talking about was, I kept telling them, I said, you have a soul. You have a soul. And they go, we have a soul? Yes, you have a soul. And in the center of your soul is your heart. And if you really want to see, you've got to learn how to see with the eyes of your heart. It was really running counter to what the zeitgeist, the dominant culture, was teaching them and how you grew up. But as I said this, they would come up to me, guys one-on-one, right? They want God. They want the way out. They want the way out. But there's nobody telling them where it is. And orthodoxy is uniquely positioned to leapfrog over the weaknesses of the Roman Church and Protestantism to bring this gospel to them. The Catholic Church can't do it. They are collapsing in Europe. The Protestant Church has already collapsed. They don't have the inner resources actually to address this. And so they're very interested in orthodoxy. In Denmark, there's only one Orthodox church in Copenhagen and one Russian Orthodox monastery in northern Denmark. That's the only presence. But the man who runs this whole operation converted to Orthodoxy about 4 years ago, lives near the monastery, so whenever the priest comes in to give the nun Holy Communion, or a liturgy, divine liturgy, there's a few people, him included, who go. This is how it starts. I got this insight before I went there. I thought maybe this is how Europe will be re-Christianized. It's not the first time Europe has been in distress. Okay, there was a point, there's a period of great darkness too, and then Saint Benedict, who was an Orthodox monk. If you read the rule of Saint Benedict, which I've read, it's thoroughly Orthodox. Started a monastery here, started a monastery there. The end result was the Christian revitalization of Europe. Maybe in this age, the Christian revitalization of Europe will occur with men rediscovering their manhood in Christ. You cannot grow into full manhood without God, and that's because the very energy of God is of a masculine character, because God is Father. The feminists will go ballistic if I say this, but I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Your virtue has covered the heavens, O Christ, and the earth is full of thy praise. The priest says that every time he prepares the gifts. Your virtue, strength of manly character, has covered the heavens, and the earth is full of thy praise. So the whole thing, what is the diabolical lie? What is the content of the lie? The content of the lie is this. If we can make men weak and men lose any sense of manhood and they become disfigured beings, they don't become women. Women are beautiful, but feminine men are disfigured and ugly. Okay? That's what we're saying. They don't become women, they become disfigured. If that happens, then fatherhood will kind of dissolve away. And that's already happening. Did you read last week, for the first time in history, that there are more kids born to single mothers than two-parent families in our history? More kids from now on are going to grow up fatherless. More than half. So it's shifting, right? if fatherhood can be removed from cultural reality, then in the end, the fatherhood of God will disappear from the cultural memory. Satan tried to kill God 2,000 years ago, and he failed. St. John Chrysostom said, hell, Hades, received a body, but it encountered the face of God. And at that point, the devil and all his demons knew that the end was coming, that he would be defeated, and hell just cried out in anger, in an impotent anger. So he knows his time is limited, but he still tries. He claims the earth as his kingdom. He still tries. If he can destroy fatherhood among the cultures, he can obliterate fatherhood from the cultural memory, and then people will serve him thinking that they serve God. That's what's going on. That's what's going on. What is the answer to that? What is the antidote? We fight, the Apostle Paul says, not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places. You know what we got to do, and this is especially for the men, but the women will clap because they're waiting for us to do it. They really are. We got to become stronger men. That's what's got to happen. Okay? Men, we got to recover our manhood and quit making excuses for being a man. All this stuff about toxic masculinity, all this stuff, you know what we're going to do from this moment on? We're going to just mock it and laugh at it and just say that has absolutely no authority over me. And we're going to reclaim manhood, and we're going to reclaim masculinity, and we're going to say no. And those who dare oppose us, especially men, feminized men, effeminate men, we're just going to knock them down. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. Enough of this. Enough of this. If you want to see where this leads, you can't compromise with a lie. You can't. You cannot compromise with a lie. You cannot reason with a lie. All you can do is do truth. And the lie will be revealed as a lie, and the power behind that lie will be vanquished. Because we do not want to become what Denmark and Norway and Sweden and Holland are. We don't want that. We don't want that. We want to recover. We want to recover manhood, and in recovering manhood, we will save culture as well. And I got to tell you, there's a whole lot of good. Every time I come back, we got our problems in America. Okay, I'm not going to deny our problems. But I got to tell you, there's a whole lot of good here. I always see that. I come back and I see the good. I go, man, this is an incredible country. The pushback, you know, when I'm talking about the pushback, how we work, that is a tremendous freedom that we have. And that needs to be protected, and that needs to be preserved. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to stand firm in our created manhood, learn what it means to be a man in Christ. We're going to provide, and we are going to protect, and we are going to be good fathers. That's what we're going to do. And watch culture and the society get healthier. I've decided, I came back with such resolve because I realize what I'm doing is really good. Sounds self-aggrandizing, but it's objective. What I'm doing is really good, and I'm going to keep doing it, but I'm going to do it stronger. We're just going to stand up against this stuff, and we're going to say, no, enough. I'm sorry, I'm done. And I'm not going to allow these effetes to destroy young men. I'm just not going to allow it. They need a defender until they figure it out themselves. I'm going to be their defender. But so is every man here who is thinking clearly. Because that's what we have to do, especially us older guys. That's what we have to do. That's our responsibility. And I'm going to start preaching this from the housetops. I'm going to do it. I'm going to preach it from the housetop. I saw what a word spoken in truth. You know, Alexander Solzhenitsyn said that. A word spoken in truth outweighs the world. And Solzhenitsyn is like my hero, one of my heroes. So whenever he says something, I really listen and think about it. One word of truth outweighs the world, and I saw that there. I was just saying things. I was just saying things. I mean, measured and thought through. It wasn't like just flipping off the top of my head or anything. These things I've been thinking about for years. But I just said them. And you could see the guys listening, drinking it in. No one tells us these things. And all I was telling them was just the basics of Orthodox anthropology, the basics of who the fathers of the church say a man is, in the simplest terms. When I said you have a soul, and in the center of your soul is your heart, you know, I saw the mind open. And to them, to us, this is simple, right? We know this. To them, this is great wisdom, because they don't hear it. They haven't heard it. But it breathes life into them. It breathes life into them. And there will be those who follow up. Already, the man who runs the whole organization told me he's getting emails. Where can I find an Orthodox? How do I find an Orthodox church? How do I find an Orthodox priest? Well, in some places there are no Orthodox churches or priests, but thank God for the internet, because there's a ton of good stuff on the internet. And they can start teaching themselves. Almost everybody who came into St. Peter's and our other churches came because of what they were exposed to on the internet. The internet isn't all evil, just partly evil, okay? But there's some good stuff there too, right? There's some good stuff there too. So they have that, and maybe, just maybe, this is how the Lord, because the Lord, when he saves man, he saves us. We're in a process of being saved. He saves culture too, you know. The Lord loves culture and society, because when he saves man, he saves the culture. He came out of the peoples. So in saving man, he saves peoples, he saves culture. So maybe, just maybe, this is the way to do it. But the maybe is not as provisional as I make it sound. I really believe it is. So,